Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on something you use every single day, probably without even thinking about it. OAuth. It's the invisible engine that lets you connect all your favorite apps together, safely and securely, without ever having to share your password. I mean, you see this button everywhere, right? Log in with Google, continue with Facebook. It's just one click and boom, you're in. It saves you from remembering a million different passwords. But have you ever stopped to wonder what's really happening behind that click? It's not magic. It's actually a very carefully choreographed dance of security protocols. So to really get why OAuth is such a game changer, we have to rewind the clock a little bit. We need to look at the world before OAuth and understand the huge problem it was designed to solve. Okay, so back in the day, if you wanted some new, cool photo app to access your pictures on, say, Flickr, you had to give that new app your Flickr username and your password. I mean, this was a horrible idea, right? Just think about it. You were giving that app the keys to your entire account, your private messages, your profile info, everything. OAuth completely changed the game. It introduced this idea of delegated access, which is just a fancy way of saying you can grant limited permissions without ever handing over your password. All right, so if we're not just handing over our passwords, what's the alternative? How does this even work? Well, the core concept here is something called delegated authorization. And luckily, there's a perfect real-world analogy that makes it super easy to understand. But first things first, we need to get one really important distinction straight: authentication versus authorization. They sound similar, but they are totally different. Authentication is about proving who you are. Think of it like showing your ID. Authorization, on the other hand, is about what you're allowed to do. It's about your permissions. OAuth, it's almost entirely about authorization. And that brings us to the official definition. OAuth 2.0 is the industry-wide open standard for this exact process. Now pay attention to two key phrases here. It lets you grant an app limited access to your stuff on another service without sharing your credentials. That's the whole ball game right there. You know, the absolute best way to wrap your head around this is the valet key analogy. When you go to a restaurant, you give the valet a special key. That key can start the car, it can park the car, but it can't open the trunk or the glove box, right? It has limited permissions. An OAuth token is exactly like that valet key for the internet. It gives an app permission to do very specific things on your behalf, but it never, ever gives them full control of your account. So how does this magic valet key actually get made and passed around securely? To understand that, we need to break down the process, which tech folks often call an OAuth flow or handshake. And we need to meet the key players involved. Think of it like a play with four main characters on stage. First, there's you, the user. In OAuth terms, you're the resource owner. Then you have the client, which is just the app that wants to access your stuff. Then we have the big one, the authorization server. This is the gatekeeper, like Google or Facebook, that actually issues the keys. And finally, there's the resource server, which is where your data, like your photos or contacts, actually lives. So the most popular and secure way this handshake happens is called the authorization code flow. It sounds complicated, but it's really just a 6-step dance. It starts with you, in the app, clicking that Login with Google button. The app then sends you over to Google. You see that familiar consent screen that says, "Do you allow this app to see your profile and email?" You click Allow. Now here's the clever part. Google sends you back to the app, but with a temporary one-time use code. Then, in the background, where you can't see it, the app talks directly to Google's server and exchanges that temporary code for the real deal, the access token. That's our valet key. Now the app can finally access your data. Now, here's a really cool part. The app doesn't just get one key, it actually gets two different kinds. The first is the access token. This is that valet key. It's usually short-lived, maybe it only lasts an hour. But you don't want to have to log in again every hour, right? So the app also gets a refresh token. This one is long-lived, and its only job, its single purpose, is to go back to the server and get a brand new access token when the old one expires. It's how you stay logged in for days or weeks at a time. All right, so this all sounds super robust and secure, and when it's done right, it absolutely is. But here's the twist in our story. The reality is that OAuth is notoriously complex and tricky to implement correctly. The thing is, getting OAuth right is hard, and it's not just small startups that struggle. Even the biggest names in tech, the giants who literally build and maintain these systems, have made critical mistakes that have led to massive security problems. I mean, take the big GitHub incident back in 2022. This is a perfect and kind of scary example. The attackers didn't hack GitHub servers directly. No, they were smarter. They went after other services that users had connected to their GitHub accounts. They stole the OAuth tokens from those services and then used those tokens to get into private code on GitHub. It's a huge reminder that your security is only as strong as the weakest app you've given permission to. And it shows you how just one tiny, subtle flaw can bring the whole house of cards down. For instance, researchers found a huge vulnerability on Booking.com. Basically, when a user logged in, the system wasn't properly checking the URL it was sending the user back to. It was something called an open redirect, and it was all an attacker needed to step into the middle of that flow, steal the authorization code, and completely take over a user's account. Okay, so that's all pretty serious stuff. But the good news is the OAuth standard didn't just stand still. It's evolved, and there are now some really powerful modern defenses that are specifically designed to stop these exact kinds of attacks. So the big question is, how do we actually stop these attacks? How do we prevent bad actors from stealing these codes and hijacking our sessions? Well, the answer lies in a couple of very clever security add-ons that are now considered essential. All right, meet our first security hero, PKCE. It's usually pronounced Pixie, and it stands for Proof Key for Code Exchange. You can think of it as a secret handshake. It basically creates a cryptographic link between the very start of the login process and the very end. It's a way to prove, without a doubt, that the application exchanging the code for a token is the exact same one that started the whole process in the first place. This one thing single-handedly shuts down those code interception attacks. Let me show you why this is such a game changer. Without PKC, if an attacker steals that temporary code, they can use it. But with PKC, the app creates a secret, one-time use password basically, right at the beginning. And to get that final access token, it has to prove that it knows that secret. An attacker who just steals the code in the middle of the flow won't know the secret. So the server just says, nope, you're not who you say you are, and the attack fails. Okay, our second hero is a bit simpler, but just as important. It's called the states parameter. All it is unique, random string of text that the app makes up at the very beginning of the login flow. It sends this state value over to the authorization server, like Google, and Google just holds onto it and sends it right back at the end. All the app has to do is check, hey, is the state value I just got back the exact same one I created a second ago? If it is, great. If not, it means something fishy is going on and it can reject the login. It's a beautifully simple defense against a nasty attack called cross-site request forgery. So let's put all these pieces together. What does a truly secure, modern OAuth setup actually look like? Well, it all boils down to following a few golden rules that have become the new industry standard. It really boils down to a few golden rules that you have to follow. Number one, always use PKC for all apps, period. Number two, always use that state parameter to stop CSRF attacks. 3, be incredibly strict about which URLs you allow users to be redirected to. That prevents the exact kind of flaw we saw with Booking.com. And finally, a more subtle one, use user IDs that never change, instead of something like an email address, which can change or be taken over. You know, at the end of the day, OAuth has given us this incredible, seamless convenience, wrapping up a universe of complexity behind one simple click. But that very simplicity can be deceiving. As we've seen, getting this stuff right is really, really hard, and the consequences of getting it wrong are severe. So I'll leave you with a final thought. Is our trust in that simple click making us forget about all the incredible complexity it was designed to protect in the first place?